I purchased my first CO2-powered airgun in 1985 from our local Kmart. It was this Crosman 357. I recently took it out of storage, and when I installed a fresh CO2 cartridge in it, the gas leaked out faster than I could muster even a few shots. It was leaking both at the gasket by the piercer and internally. It was clearly time for a rebuild. On eBay, they sell replacement O-ring kits for the piercing body assembly. They also sell O-ring kits for the valve assembly. I replaced all the valve assembly and piercing body O-rings with new ones. The piercing body no longer leaked, but there was still an internal leak. After several attempts of getting the internal leak to stop, I gave up. I had went through 5 CO2 cartridges during testing. I found on eBay that you could buy the complete CO2 valve assembly with tube and CO2 piercer. This is what I recommend to anyone attempting to fix their vintage Crosman 357. The price of this assembly is about the same price as the O-ring kit. Once the side of the Crosman 357 is off, simply pull out the old CO2 valve assembly with tube and CO2 piercer, then install the new one in its place. The CO2 valve assembly with tube and CO2 piercer is the bright silver assembly circled in red. I don't recommend taking apart the trigger, hammer, and cylinder advance mechanism as it is unnecessary. Once the side of the Crosman 357 is back in place, you'll need to tighten the guide collar with a small screwdriver. The pellet clips that originally came with my Crosman 357 would not advance correctly as the ratchet teeth the index finger pushes against were worn. The BB clips used for the newer Crosman Vigilante fit the old Crosman 357 perfectly. Time to test my Crosman 357 again. It is a good idea to put a dab of pellet oil on the tip of the CO2 cartridge. My vintage Crosman 357 works as good as new since I replaced the CO2 valve assembly. I am now taking 6 shots from the vintage Crosman 357. All the gold paint that had emblazoned 357 on the grips had worn off. I used gold enamel paint I had around from my model train hobby to repaint them using a small brush I used for detail work. I used a small jeweler's screwdriver to scrape off any excess gold paint. I think the 357 emblems turned out pretty well. I also treated the barrel and frame to a coat of Armor All to make them shine. I hope you enjoyed this video about the rebuild of my vintage Crosman 357 I purchased in 1985. Please like this video and subscribe to Rust Belt Airgun so that you don't miss any of my new videos. Thank you.